Welcome back to a brand new episode of season 3 of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Have you ever had a moment where you think, if I keep living like this, what will my life look like 5 years from now? Most people set goals for the version of themselves they wish existed, but today we're flipping that. We're talking about future-based accountability and how to let your future self become the guide for your present self. This episode is about long-term thinking. It's about small daily decisions, and it's about building a life that your 5 years from now version would look back on with pride, not regret. Adam, let's get into it.
What is going on, man? Yeah, this is a fun one. I'm excited for this. Well, guys, let's just jump right into it. I want to start here. V for visualization. Visualization isn't just for motivation, it's for direction also. So most people, they think of visualization as dreaming, dreaming about success, the house, the money, the lifestyle. That's very surface level stuff. So we want to go deeper today. We want to talk about, who do you want to become? What does the best version of you look like 5 years from now? So picture that person. What are their habits, their confidence, their relationships, even just their peace that they have? What are they like on a Tuesday morning in 5 years from now? If you can really visualize and see that very clearly, well, you can start working backwards from it. You can reverse engineer it, because if that vision is foggy, the roadmap will be too. So you really don't have to think through it too in depth, other than just reverse engineering it. Because if you don't have a vision for your life, somebody else will use you for theirs. I really like that quote. Let me say that one more time for you guys. If you don't have a vision for your life, somebody else will use you for theirs. And that was actually by a guy by the name of Andy Stanley.
Powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that leads us into the second big idea. The future you is already watching. And I love this thought, because I really believe that my 50-year-old self, my 60-year-old self, even my 90-year-old self is out there right now watching my 40-year-old self. And they're encouraged. That version of Ben is encouraging this version of Ben. Remember, the best person to take care of the old you is the young you. And so when I make responsible decisions, when I focus on progress, maturing, growth, personal development, my future self in the future is thanking me. Every decision you make today, that version of you 5 years from now has to live with it. So here's a filter worth using. Before you act, ask yourself, will the future me thank me for this or resent me? What would my 90-year-old self say? Would he be supportive? Will they be proud that I showed up today, or disappointed, or that I skipped it, whatever that is again? You're either creating your future self or you're abandoning that person completely. That's something that Dan Martell has said. And that quote still hits me hard. This mindset gives you daily clarity, not pressure, not shame, just clarity.
Yeah, I think this is going to really become a talking point in 20 years, when all of a sudden some of these technological advances happen in the medical field, where all of a sudden it's not that unrealistic for somebody to live to 120, 130 years old.
140 in my case.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, what's your future self? Not at 90, but, Matt, just crazy to even think about that. But, what's your 130, 140, 150-year-old self going to say? That's something that's an uncharted territory. We don't have to go down a rabbit hole with that, but just interesting to think about that perspective as well. But
I read a lot of biographies, and so one of the eras that I really enjoy is kind of the Civil War, Industrial Revolution, second half of the 1800s into the first half of the 1900s. And some of them lived pretty long. Like Rockefeller, for example, lived, I think, until he was 97 or 98 years old. But then I asked myself, I'm living to 140. So what would that be like for him? And you just realize how long that is. Kind of a final thought here on this topic. One thing that always blows my mind is when you hear about like these animals that are really, really old. Like there's that sea turtle. There's a sea turtle, I think, in the Tulsa Aquarium. And he was literally born before the Civil War.
Yeah, I think like 190 years old, one of the turtles.
I mean, think about that. Like, can you even 190 years old? Like, obviously he's in water and in an aquarium. He's not living our lives, but I mean, just think about that, though.
And this is a thought, a concept that is, for a lot of us, myself included, it's complicated. It's hard to even think about, what the world is going to be like when you're a 50-year-old self or 60-year-old self.
Mhm.
So if you guys are wondering just like how to actually act on this, the really good tool to use is what we call backcasting. So most
Mm.
people forecast, they try to predict what might happen. Think of like a weather forecaster. Forecasting is one thing, but backcasting, believe it or not, is the exact opposite. So you start with the destination and then you reverse engineer everything that's going to take for that path to get there. So let's just say, as an example, you want to own 10 properties by 2030.
Yeah.
Well, what needs to be true by 2028? What actions need to happen in 2026? What do you need to do maybe this quarter? What do you need to do tomorrow? That's how you collapse the gap between who you are now and who you're becoming. This
Mm.
is a really difficult thing to get kind of in your head, but once you start to understand that, it really makes things exciting because you feel a lot more accomplished even on a daily and weekly basis because you at least are taking those small actions today to get you to where you're trying to go versus just hoping that it ends up happening somehow in a decade.
Yeah, when I hear you talk about that, to me, that speaks of living with intention and pursuing the life that you want, having a vision, having those goals. And that's why I've always said it's really important to have a very compelling vision for yourself because it gives you a call to action. And when you have that compelling future and that vision, it gives you more clarity in the present. Have you ever had experienced this? Because I think there's a lot of us at times, or maybe different times in our life, where like we got to this moment and it's not where you wanted to be. And then you ask yourself, like, how did I end up here? How did I get here? I think, for me, probably one of those was with my divorce. I'm getting divorced 2018, just asking myself, like, how in the world did I get here? And then looking back, I realized all of this path that I went down was totally off of who I was called to be, and I went just so far into the weeds and into the woods and on this other path, and it can serve as a wake up call.
hmm Yeah, it can be both for positive and negative things. If it's a negative thing like a divorce, it's probably what actions did you not do.
Yeah,
If it's a positive thing, thinking back about what did you do that got you there.
yeah, and a big reason for that is because all of that, all of those decisions, those judgments, the avoidance, it all compounds. So every time you make that hard choice, it gets easier to make the same choice again tomorrow. Breaking the diet, the ice cream, having that cheat meal. But every time you avoid what matters, that avoidance stacks too in the same things, in debt, in habits, in missed opportunity. Success is never owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every single day. I love that quote, and that's a quote that we use in running over at Wheat Ridge High School. Success is never owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day because in running, like in mortgage, last year was great. Fantastic. Last quarter was great. Okay. Last month was great. What does that mean for today? It means absolutely nothing. You got to show up. You got to go earn it. You got to go build. So let your future you get the reward. And if he doesn't get the reward, then he's going to get the consequences. Think about that.
Love that. Love that. Really like that quote too. I talk about Andy Frisella quite a bit. I was just talking about him last week on our episode, but they have a quote that they use a lot in a lot of their clothing apparel where it
Okay.
just says dues paid. And, it directly ties into this quote, success is never owned, it's rented, and rent is due every single day. Have those dues been paid today?
It's due today.
hmm Well, let's just kind of give you guys a little fun takeaway and a challenge. So, this is just one big challenge for you guys to work on this week until next week's episode. I want you guys to sit down and just spend 10 minutes today writing a letter from your future self. Make it real, make it honest. What would you thank you for? What would you maybe tell you to stop avoiding? The path to a life that you're proud of isn't built in January resolutions, it's built in these daily decisions made with that long game in mind. It's not a race, or sorry, it's not a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Just remember that.
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, you brought up Mr. Beast and how he had recorded a video in the present to himself 10 years in the future. And so what you're suggesting here, though, is that your future self is writing a letter to your current self.
Yeah, and this is we've talked about similar tools and tricks, tactics similar to this, but basically the opposite. Yeah, where you're writing a letter to your future self. This is just visualizing what that future self person is in 5 years.
Yeah.
What kind of habits do you have? What's things that you're really proud of for being in
Mm.
that place? And then reverse engineering it back by doing that back casting just to talk through what you need to do, telling your future, or sorry, telling your current self, what you need to do to get to that place.
Well, let's have some fun then. It's like my future self is going to be writing me somewhere in Europe or Hawaii. And he's going to say, "Dear Ben, I'm visiting the property that you're going to purchase 2 years from now. We're out here on a vacation with the family. Life is good." And just, just get really
Hmm.
creative and get excited and like share that. That's fun.
Yeah, it's too bad that we just don't know like where technology will be in 5 or 10 years, but it would be really cool, almost like a time capsule where you could almost create a business out of this where people can, write certain letters, ideas of where they think they're going to be, and then, having some way to not be opening it, not even be delivering it to that future self until the time comes. That'd be really fun.
When I think about stuff like this, I think about the first Superman that came out probably like 12 or 13 years ago, where Russell Crowe was the dad and he had sent baby Superman to Earth, but as they were leaving their planet, I can't remember the name of the planet, but as baby Superman was leaving the planet, they're under this fierce attack. And so, even though the dad had already died, his consciousness had been downloaded into this computer chip and it was a hologram. So, even though it wasn't really him, it was all of his stories, his values, his beliefs. And it was kind of like this digital mentor, and that kind of has always stuck with me where I could see something like that in the future where, maybe 200 years from now, your kids, Adam, it's like they would never know you, but they could know your digital you. And you could be there as a mentor to them years or hundreds of years from now. So I don't know. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that.
Well, that's enough with the sci-fi, but that's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, do yourself a favor, send it to one person you care about because odds are they're also thinking about who they want to become this year. Next week, we're diving into the routines that actually build momentum, not just motivation. Until then, make your future self proud. And thanks for being part of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. God bless. We'll see you guys next week.